Hey everyone, it's Michelle Malkin again. This is part 2 today of hashtag Malkin Live. And as promised, I have a hero of mine, just somebody who's been a role model, a spirit animal is the term that is often used popularly when it comes to defending American sovereignty, American values, American tradition, and American law. I am joined today, right now, by Jeff Sessions. Hi.
Hey, Michelle. Good to be with you.
Oh, thanks for having the time to spend with us. Now, I understand from following your Twitter stream that you just came from a meeting and a protest with employees of the Tennessee Valley Authority who are being laid off. Tell us about what happened today.
Wow, it's so interesting, Michelle. 4 years ago, here in Huntsville, Madison area, Donald Trump came in the campaign. That's the day I endorsed him. And on that stage, he had half a dozen workers, as I recall, from Disney who had been outsourced, who were required to train their replacements. These foreign workers were brought in mostly from India, and they took jobs of Americans under a program that was supposed to provide workers when there were no American workers. But we had American workers working at Disney, been there many years, many of them. They were thrown into the marketplace, forced to train their replacements. That's what the Tennessee Valley Authority did. Just last week, they sent a reduction in force termination notice to 108 employees, 12 earlier in the year, and more will be expected in the months to come. And these workers at TVA will have to train their replacement, and the workers taking those jobs will be located certainly not in the Tennessee Valley, and most of them will be a product of the H-1B program in a way it was never intended. It's unexcusable. We've got to stop this. We have no jobs in America, Michelle. There are no jobs. We got 30-something million people unemployed. We are at stunning 13+% unemployment. We need to be working for every single American to take a job, not to lay off 100 Americans and bring in foreign workers to take those jobs. And let me just ask your listeners, what would it be like for you if you'd worked at TVA 20 years? What jobs can you find right now? How many of them are out there? What kind of salary prospects might you have? So it's a really serious thing. It provides an opportunity for us to confront the issue with more clarity. I did that in the Senate and get busy about fixing it. The president's order yesterday won't fix it immediately, but there's some prospects in it that are good.
I think it is so important for you to remind people that you were the first major Republican elected official to step forward and endorse President Trump, precisely because these issues of American sovereignty, protecting American jobs, protecting the American economy were the bread and butter of your Senate career and tenure, every aspect of it, both illegal immigration and, of course, many of these programs now that are undermining the American workforce. And it seems especially unconscionable with regard to H-1B and the types of workers that you were meeting with and supporting today, that they work in STEM fields, the so-called STEM fields. And of course, Alabama has a very highly educated, highly skilled, native-born workforce. So many young people are told, if you go into science, technology, engineering, and math, this will be a ticket to success. But, you know, when you were working hard in the Senate on these issues, you knew exactly what was happening to American STEM workers. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, thanks, Michelle. Yes, we did. We had hearings on it. You know, I chaired the Immigration Subcommittee of Judiciary. I renamed it. I called it Immigration and the National Interest, because I think immigration should serve the national interest. It should be a positive thing for America, enhance our employees' job possibilities and wages, not depress them, and those kinds of things. And we do it right, it can be done in a positive way. But I got to tell you, we learned some important things back when I was in the Senate. We had witnesses to testify. There was no shortage of American IT workers, and there was conclusive proof of it. The proof was wages hadn't gone up. As these economists said, if you've got a shortage, wages will go up. Wages had not gone up. And we had economists and we had victims of these programs testify before our committee. So it's something I feel deeply about. I came to feel strongly about. In fact, I began to realize that the great CEOs, the corporatists, you know what I named them? I called them masters of the universe.
Yes, I remember. Yes.
That was my title for them. And I got sick of them, really. And so they came in and said would say all these things, how much a shortage of the workers there were. I tell you one little story. I won't try to be succinct, but it was a fabulous story. So they were saying they needed more H-1B workers, more. And then I made a speech on the floor that went over an hour, and I read off how many people Google had laid off and Cisco had laid off and all these companies, suggesting that Mr. Zuckerberg, if he needed some employees, maybe he should call Mr. Cisco and ask for some of those he laid off. Rather than bring them in from abroad. Give me a break. So this is the kind of thing. And these people at TVA are talented, good people, had decent wages, middle class, good salaries for the region. But look, they act like all these H-1B workers are going to create a new iPad or something.
Right.
And most of them are smart, capable people, but the Americans are too, and they do not need these workers to function in America and run our computer manufacturing systems.
Yes, there was no worker shortage before the pandemic. There certainly isn't one now. So many of the myths that Open Borders Incorporated has propagated have been completely debunked by this pandemic situation. And yet, you have all of these corporation CEOs who insist on insulting the IT workers, the highly skilled workers that are already here, that have been laid off. And as you mentioned at the start of this, who are forced to train their inferior replacements as a condition of getting severance. And most people, Jeff, they just can't wrap their heads around this, that it continues to happen after the Disney workers really raised awareness about it, and all of your committee hearings did. And B, they can't understand why this is legal. And we know that the Disney workers and the Southern California Edison workers, for example, did try to get standing in American courts of law, and they can't sue. There's no legal recourse for what was done to them.
That is so right. And there's a loophole in the law. I don't think Congress intended it. I'm sure most people who voted for it had no idea that the replacements that would come out of this system would be foreign workers for existing Americans. They thought there was possibly a shortage in IT workers, and they were going to let some come in from abroad. So this has been quite different than most, I think, members of Congress thought they were voting for. And I just saw today all the Silicon Valley masters of the universe trash President Trump's order. And the head of Google, Mr. What's his name?
Sundar Pichai.
Yeah, Sundar Pichai. He said that we stand by our immigrants, workers. Well, is he not standing by American workers? He only wants to stand by immigrant workers. What about the people that are getting fired, losing their jobs, who've been faithful employees? So I think, and one of them said, this will impact our diversity program. And I say to them, well, what about having more Hispanics and more African Americans? How about developing diversity through that program instead of abroad? And I think that would be the kind of, it just shows to me the excuses they're making, and the fact that so throughout the outsourcing situation, we have not had vacancies. Jobs are being filled. They have to fire the American before they can bring in a foreign worker.
Yeah. Now, you well know how the swamp works, and you know how difficult it is to go up against these masters of the universe. What was your assessment of the order that came down yesterday, the expansion of the so-called immigration ban that now does include several key categories of temporary visa holders, from H-1B, H-4, which is the spouses of H-1, L-1, the intra-company transfers for foreign workers, J-1, which spans a lot of different types of workers who are coming in through the cultural exchange program, and of course H-2B visas. Were you pleased to see how far they did go?
Much better than before. You know, I called in April for the president to stop this importation of workers, and he made an order. He said he agreed with that, and he basically didn't agree with me so much. We're just saying that's what we need to stop.
Yes.
And I was pleased to see it, but it didn't have a lot of teeth to it. So we know that. So we wanted more, and boy, this one is a lot more, and it's going to be impactful. It's stirred up Silicon Valley, but it's still not a draconian thing that's going to cause turmoil in the job market. But it is time. He said he will extend it till the end of the year. And I believe we're on the right track there. I think it's much better. The people who care about this tell me they think it's a real improvement, and they're excited about it. So I'm very happy.
Yes. You know, one thing, we've been doing this a long time, you much longer than I. One thing that's really promising is this development now of many more American workers speaking up and getting organized. And you have the endorsement of one of these new groups, just a great, energetic group of moms and dads and tech workers and tech families, the American Workers Coalition. You're seeing them really try to pose some sort of counterbalance and force to Open Borders Inc. It really is David versus Goliath, Jeff, and yet the Republican Party is not where Trump was when he campaigned, when you endorsed him. A lot of times the president isn't where he is when he said that he was for American workers. So this was a huge step in the right direction yesterday. What is it that the Republican Party needs to be doing? Of course, you know, we need you back in the Senate, and that's a huge thing. And I want to talk more about that in a second. But why aren't there more people in the swamp DC Republican circles who can, I mean, even if you just look at this from a pragmatic point of view, this is a popular position to defend American sovereignty and support American workers. Why can't they get that through their heads?
You know, it's sometimes frustrating. It really is. I felt it when I was in the Senate, you know, and we were able to successfully block this amnesty bill with no enforcement 3 different times, although it had substantial Republican support. One time President Bush supported it, another time President Obama supported it, and it was a near-run thing. But we got, we were successful. And I spent countless hours mastering the details and showing the loopholes and why it wouldn't work. And we were able to honestly show that it was not an effective bill. It did not do what it did. And we were able to stop it by the skin of our teeth. But I would just say to you, I was disappointed to see 9 of our Republican colleagues, senators, write President Trump a few weeks ago and say, don't do this.
Yes.
Do not stop bringing in workers when we've got 13% unemployment. And what's going to happen? The TVA workers, where are they going? Are they going on welfare? Are they going on unemployment compensation? Will they be on food stamps? What will happen to them? So this is not a smart thing for the government to throw 200 TVA employees, as an example, on the unemployment rolls in a time of massive unemployment. So I feel like that we got to get our Republicans to wake up. If I'm in the Senate, they're going to hear from me.
Yes.
My opponent, let me just take a minute.
Yes.
My opponent, Tommy Tuberville, does not get it. In fact, he's not only doesn't get it, he's wrong on it. In December, he said there are 400,000 skilled workers in India. We want them to come here. This is exactly the H-1B program he's talking about. He's talking about even more. If the workers are there and want to come here, they should come. About the borders, He said that the border, the 100,000 people at the border attempting to come here, those workers just want jobs. We want them to have jobs, and we just want to know who they are. But we have to have limits. We can't flood labor markets and see wages collapse. He says his business buddies like them, these workers. They work hard, and he wants to see more. So he does not understand in any way this idea of the threats we're seeing today to the average American worker. He just does not. I'm not exaggerating. Now he runs an ad and says, I'm for President Trump, and I'm for building the wall, and I'm not for amnesty. But day after day, out of his own mouth, as he campaigned around the state, he's revealed that he does not understand the enormity of the impact that's hurting working Americans, African Americans, poor people trying to rise on the ladder of success, and they're being held down by an excessive flow of labor, legal and illegal.
Yes, and America, not just Alabamans, but all of America cannot afford another person in the Senate whose knowledge of immigration policy is this deep, and is so susceptible to these ineluctable forces of Open Borders Incorporated. We've moved so far beyond this idea that you can oppose illegal immigration, but then continue to welcome unlimited mass migration without any kind of concern for the impact that has on the workforce that is already here. And it's across the entire wage scale. And this is something that so much of your work illuminated for people. You've spent years trying to educate people about this, whether it's H-1B at the high end or H-2A and H-2B at the low end of the wage scale, and everything in between. And so the idea of crusading for, what was it, 400,000 foreign workers from India to come into the country without any regard to the consequences of that, we can't afford that anymore, Jeff. And so, there's so many people who are so grateful for the work that you've done on this. I think that there are a lot of people who are not aware of, the groundwork that you laid for, an America First campaign that was carried out by Donald Trump. So I wanted to give you an opportunity, because there are still a lot of people out there who, the recusal issue and all of this, and, Trump, coming out in favor of Tuberville, which is just not, it does not compute. Can you talk about a little bit about that, and just sort of elucidate for people why it's important that you be sent to the Senate and not that dude?
Well, it is important because I do have a strong belief that maybe my election could help us get some things done. I supported the president's agenda actually before he announced. And then when he announced, I loved what he was saying, both on trade, on immigration, on other issues of importance, judges and those kind of things. So I was a big Trump supporter and still am for his agenda. And I believe he has to win this reelection, because Joe Biden will be a total disaster.
Yes.
Total disaster. So back to your question about the disagreement. We did not know about the Flynn investigations and what Comey was doing. That was all secret when I became Attorney General. Then I'm briefed on it, and they were investigating the campaign. I had a title. I think I may have been the only elected official that had an actual title. I was chairman of the National Security Committee, and that was sent to the Federal Election Commission. So I was there. I didn't just endorse him. I traveled all over the country with him. I would introduce Rudy Giuliani, and he would introduce the president at a lot of those big rallies, and it was fun. We traveled together. So I was deeply involved, and there's a regulation in the department saying if they're investigating your campaign that you are a part of, you can't supervise it as Attorney General. That's flat out post-Watergate rule that I think clearly applied. In addition to that, they started investigating me. They said I was meeting with Russians, so I was the subject of it. And thirdly, I would have been a witness to a number of the things that occurred. So it's just basic law that a prosecutor, whether it's a county prosecutor or the Attorney General of the United States, they can't investigate themselves or organizations they played a key role in. Attorney General Ed Meese, a wonderful Attorney General Meese under Reagan, he just did an ad for me, and he said, if Jeff had not recused himself, he would have broken the law. He said that, but it helped President Trump, and it got the matter over. He said, I'm a great conservative and urged people in Alabama to vote for me. And he said that. And Rudy Giuliani said I had to recuse myself. Bill Barr at the Attorney General, when he was being confirmed, he said I should have done so. Lindsey Graham has said I had to recuse myself. I think it was a situation in which I just had to do that. I was required to by law. It would not have helped the president for me to try to hang on and supervise an investigation of that kind. So I hate it. I know the president feels strongly about it, but I'm asking the people of Alabama to make a decision about who can best represent them and who was going to be the most effective advocate for Trump policies, me or somebody who wants more and more.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things that you did, which of course was back in the news, was assess the unconstitutionality and the illegality of Obama's DACA order. And of course, that was the subject of a Supreme Court ruling last week. Thoughts on what's to be done now?
Well, I'm irritable still about that.
Yes.
I'm very happy with Justice Clarence Thomas and the defenders, but it was very frustrating. Look, the President Obama, if you remember, said 22 times he did not have the power to do this.
Exactly.
If you're in the country illegally, you cannot participate in Social Security and you cannot get a job. I mean, that's for everybody here illegally. And so what President Obama did, he said, if you came here as a teenager, then you can get jobs and pay into Social Security, which is illegal.
Yes.
So Clarence Thomas said, essentially, he said Attorney General Jeff Sessions was correct. This was ultra vires, outside the law, and it's obvious that Attorney General should not follow a law that's illegal, a policy that's not lawful. So we had the right to withdraw it. Yet the court came up with this ruling. So what do I think will happen? It looks like the president will alter that, he will reissue the additional regulations. It will take 6-9 months, maybe plus, to get it done the way the court said ought to be done, slowing everything down, once more handicapping the ability of a president to carry out his executive functions. These are within his discretion. The courts does not need to be demanding him explain himself every time he takes an executive action. That's just irritable to me. I saw it time and time again, that we had to go before courts and try to explain why the president or cabinet official made a decision. They don't set policy.
That's right.
They have to simply ask, is it lawful or not?
Right.
And I think it's a big deal. So the president will do that. And then it will give him some leverage to begin maybe to create some enforcement here that will be good for America. I think there's something that could be done in a bipartisan way to get this thing done, but it has to make sure that nothing like this happens again. There won't be continued illegal flow. In next 3-4 years, there'll be another batch demanding amnesty.
Yes, exactly. The president today is in, I believe, Yuma, Arizona, to celebrate construction of a couple more miles of southern border wall fence. What's your assessment of how that's all going? And then also, of course, the wall is very, very important, but so much of the work that you've done has, again, educated people about all the ways that DC builds figurative tunnels underneath any obstruction at the border.
Oh, it was really frustrating. There's so many loopholes in it. So we have this book, 700 pages of Immigration and Nationality Act, designed to create a lawful system of immigration, but like Swiss cheese, courts and lawyers and activists have created holes in it. So it almost is unable to accomplish the very fundamental thing it was established to do, which is have a lawful system. If you want to come here, you apply. If you qualify, you get to come. If you don't get to come. So we really need congressional action. That's what I'm saying. If I'm in the Senate, we're going to work hard to close some of these loopholes. So the fence will be a big help. Yes. It will maximize and multiply the efficiency of every Border Patrol officer. And if we establish it's solid, fewer people will come, Michelle. It's a virtuous cycle or a negative cycle.
Yes.
If people start hearing back in Guatemala that they can't get in, they'll stop coming. And then there'll be fewer having to be processed. So that's what we need to accomplish.
So people who want to know more about your campaign can go to jeffsessions.com. And I want to make sure that people know I've tweeted about this, and I'll keep telling people we're going to be doing a virtual Zoom fundraiser tomorrow evening. Ryan Gerdusky, the journalist and author of a great new book called They're Not Listening, will join us as well. And you can find out more about that if you go to my Twitter feed, and more about how to support Jeff Sessions, who is one of the most stalwart godfathers of what I call the America First movement. It's always an honor to talk with you, Jeff, and just so great that you were able to join the TVA workers there today. That's more of what you will do when Alabama voters, if they know what's good for themselves and their country, send you back to the U.S. Senate.
Hey, thank you. Good to be with you.
All right. Take care. See you tomorrow.